I ask you to open with me to Matthew chapter 15, beginning verse 32. Allow me to please continue the message that we started last week. And I say continue. This is not a part two, it's a continuation of the same word. The same way God talked to the disciples, he talks to us. They were not always perceptive. Sometimes we may miss a thing or two. So it certainly doesn't hurt for God to try to emphasize to us and to communicate to us, however, by whatever means, what it is he wants us to know. But let's go through that text again, shall we? We're looking at Matthew chapter 15, starting at verse 32, and we'll read through to verse 16:12. Okay? Scripture says, "Then Jesus called his disciple to him and said, I have compassion on the crowd, because they have been with me now 3 days and have nothing to eat. And I am unwilling to send them away hungry, lest they faint on the way." And the disciples said to him, "Where are we to get enough bread in such a desolate place to feed so great a crowd?" And Jesus said to them, "How many loaves do you have?" They said, 7, and a few small fish. And directing the crowd to sit down on the ground, he took the 7 loaves and fish, and having given thanks, he broke them and gave them to the disciples. And the disciples gave them to the crowds. And they all ate and were satisfied, and they took up 7 baskets full of the broken pieces left over. Those who ate were 4,000 men, besides women and children. And after sending away the crowds, he got into the boat and went to the region of Magadan. And Pharisees and Sadducees came to him to test him. They asked him to show them a sign from heaven. He answered them, "When it is evening, you say it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning it will be stormy today, for the sky is red and threatening. You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the times. An evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign, but no sign will be given to it except the sign of Jonah." So he left them and departed. Chapter 16, verse 5. When the disciples reached the other side, they had forgotten to bring any bread. Jesus said to them, "Watch and beware the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees." And they began discussing it among themselves, saying, "We brought no bread." But Jesus, aware of this, said, "Oh, you of little faith, why are you discussing among yourselves the fact that you have no bread? Do you not yet perceive? Do you not remember the 5 loaves for the 5,000 and how many baskets you gathered? Or the 7 loaves for the 4,000 and how many baskets you gathered? How is it that you fail to understand that I did not speak about bread? Beware the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees." Then they understood that he did not tell them to beware of the leaven of bread, but of the teaching of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And to make this point, we quote Yogi Berra, a great philosopher who said, "It's like deja vu all over again." That's when you feel as if you have been there before. And the reason is because, yes, Jesus had been down this road with the disciples. He did a miracle, a mighty miracle right in their midst, multiplied loaves of fish right before their eyes and fed thousands. And yet, when similar circumstances came up, it was as if the disciples didn't know what in the world they were doing. And so he does it all over again. And I'm going to skip the Yogi Berra part because we had talked about that last time. But I do want to get to the main point of the message. Our spiritual dullness and immaturity will keep us from making progress in our walk with God. The first time, God communicated something very powerful on that day when he multiplied 5 loaves and 2 fish. And yet that lesson was lost on them. Now again, I'm not going to be too hard on them because many a lesson has been lost on me too, for one reason or another. And I think God is challenging on that. I think God is challenging us. Because we have to look at what is the root. Why is it that sometimes the lesson just doesn't hit home? Why is it that sometimes we just can't seem to understand what God is saying? And Jesus makes clear here that sometimes we have a spiritual dullness in our life. Sometimes there is an immaturity. Sometimes there is something that is blocking the message from getting through. And we mentioned last week, just to briefly summarize, that the Lord's compassion for the people remains the same. He is consistent yesterday, today, and forever. And he showed that compassion to the people. So when presented with a hungry crowd who stood in need, he didn't change his approach. He sought to minister to them the same way he did last time. God is not a God who's given to fads. He put in place the principles and the laws that govern this universe. And likewise, he gives us principles in his word that we can apply to circumstances that we face. That's what Jesus did. And sometimes we just don't get the message the first time. Listen, that happens. Often, and I think we in our day are not as likely to listen. We live in a media-saturated day. You are hit with so many messages that come your way each day. Everything from text messages to cell phone calls, email, and any number of things. Videos, other mass media. So many things are just coming at you. Do you find it sometimes hard to retain it all? It's just so easy for things to go right over our head. Or, what my mother used to say, it was in one ear and out the other. And that sometimes happens to us spiritually. But often, we make the excuse to absolve ourselves from responsibility. The truth of the matter is, maybe the disciples knew all too well what Jesus was going to do, and they just didn't feel like it. Sometimes we find ourselves there, don't we? Oh, does this mean we got to stay late again? Does this mean we got to multiply bread and fish again? Oh no, this means we got to take care of another hungry mob. Oh, goodness gracious. It was much easier for them to play stupid and to plead like they didn't know what was going on. And I think sometimes we too may find it convenient to just claim that we just don't know what to do. Therefore, it's not my problem. And in doing so, we try to absolve ourselves from it. But I'd like to go on from there. Okay? Now